Hey everyone, my name is Wedge, and we finally made it to the end of our Best of the Rest series, talking about the rest of the cards in Dragons of Tarkir not spoiled individually. As always, the color pie ends with green, so that's where we're at. Dramoka and Atarka players, let's see if you got anything good, shall we? Einok Artillerist is 3 mana for a 4/1 Hound Archer. It has reach as long as it has a +1/+1 counter on it. This card's just super awkward. Is it weird that the best part about this is that it helps a mechanic from a different clan? Formidable gets a decent amount of use out of this card while you won't always have a +1/+1 counter on it. 4 power is a lot, but 1 toughness definitely is not. Atarka Beastbreaker is 2 mana for a 2/2 human warrior with Formidable. If creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, you can pay 5 mana, and the Beastbreaker gets +4/+4 until end of turn. I mean, it's a bear. 2 mana for a 2/2 in a format full of 3 mana 2/2s isn't the worst thing ever. The Formidable ability is nice late game when you need the mana sink, plus it helps keep the card relevant. It's certainly playable in limited strategies looking to go big with their creatures. Circle of Elders is 2 colorless and 2 green for a 2/4 human shaman with vigilance and Formidable. If you control creatures with total power 8 or greater, you can tap it to add 3 colorless to your mana pool. I actually really like this. A 2/4 for 4 with vigilance is pretty nice. You'll block really well and attack profitably a decent amount of the time. The Formidable clause lets you reach your top end real quick. In the right deck, this will end up being outrageously explosive. Tapping 1 creature for 3 mana is good no matter how you look at it, honestly. Conifer Strider is 4 mana for a 5/1 elemental with hexproof. This card just seems too awkward to me. 4 mana, 5/1 with hexproof. There are a couple things going on here. First, it does real well with Formidable. It gets you more than halfway there by itself, so that's cool. It also dodges a lot of removal, letting it be a beacon for Formidable. Beyond that, hopefully you can bolster it up a bit so it can attack, but if not, it's a threat on defense, I guess. It's not my favorite card, but I think it can work with either enough Formidable creatures to take advantage of, or enough bolster to make it huge. Dragon Scarred Bear is 3 mana for a 3/2 bear with Formidable. If you control creatures with total power 8 or greater, you can pay 2 mana and regenerate the bear. I love this. 3 mana for a 3/2 is so much nicer than 3 mana for a 2/3, especially when the Formidable is active. Regeneration is amazing in a format where removal is coveted so highly, even more so when that saves it from trading with morphs. It's a relatively simple card, but it should be in most green decks you draft for sure. Dramoka's Gift is 5 mana for an instant, bolster 4. I wanted to look at this as a +4/+4 combat trick, but the fact that the +4/+4 comes in the form of counters just makes it way better. It is pretty expensive, and you don't choose who gets the buff, which is unfortunate, but you're adding 4 power and toughness to the board at instant speed. It's going to cost your opponent. I don't often play cards like this, but I think this one could make the cut. Conifer Strider into Dramoka's Gift seems pretty dirty, just saying. Glade Watcher is 2 mana for a 3/3 elemental with Defender and Formidable. If you control creatures with total power 8 or greater, you can pay 1 green, and it can attack this turn as though it didn't have Defender. Yes! Everything about this card is a yes for me. 2 mana for a 3/3 already has me pumped, even though it can't attack right away. There's nothing wrong with playing this on turn 2 and just sitting back while your opponent's morph creatures do nothing. Plus, they aren't going to want to use a removal spell for this. It's amazing for board stalling. It'll definitely help you get to the late game a bit easier. Guardian Shieldbearer is 2 mana for a 2/1 human soldier with Megamorph costing 4 mana. When it's turn face up, put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature you control. Sure. Isn't the most exciting card ever, but it is a 3/2 when you turn it face up, and it adds another 1 power to the board. The card's okay, is not much more to say than that. Inspiring Call is 3 mana for an instant. Draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it. Those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. This goes into one deck. The Dramoka deck, where all you do is bolster 100% of the time. That is the only deck this goes in. Otherwise, it's a bit too specific in its uses and could end up being a dead card in your hand. Lurking Earrings is 5 mana for a 3/5 cat beast with Formidable. If creatures you control have total power 8 or greater, you can pay 3 and target creature blocks the Earrings this turn if able. This seems just fine. A 3/5 for 5 is going to make a decent blocker. I never really know where to land on lure type effects, but my gut says it won't come into play that much with this card in particular. I think it's just a decent card with decent stats and an okay ability. It's worth playing, but you're not going to freak out about it, you know? Obscuring Aether is 1 green mana for an enchantment. Face down creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. You can also pay 2 mana and turn it face down. What? That first ability makes sense, but the second one makes you turn this face down and then that's it. There's no way to turn it face up. It's just super weird. Anyways, this is only relevant in decks running a crap load of morph cards as it lets you play this on turn 1 and then a morph on turn 2. It's decent acceleration. Other than that, I'm not really sure about this card at all. It's just really weird. Press the Advantage is 2 colorless and 2 green for an instant. Up to 2 target creatures each get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Sure, this is an overrun, but it's a bit easier on the mana and its instant speed, which is nice. I can see playing one of these in any green deck in Limited, whether it's in Dromoka or a Tarka. I could see this being useful. The potential for a blowout is real. Revealing Wind is 3 mana for an instant. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn. You may look at each face-down creature that's attacking or blocking. I'm all for fog effects. Love Angus Mackenzie, but I just... This is expensive and does nothing I care about. I don't care what you have face down, at least not enough to spend 3 mana to figure it out. I'll take a big ol' pass. Salt Road Quartermasters is 3 mana for a 1/1 human soldier. It enters the battlefield with 2 +1/+1 counters on it. You can pay 3 mana and remove a +1/+1 counter from it to give another creature a +1/+1 counter. This is so reminiscent of Spike creatures. Love them. While this ability is more expensive than I want it to be, I don't care. A 3/3 for 3 is decent already, and the ability to move around power and toughness at instant speed is pretty sweet. I'll take it every draft. Segmented Crotic is 6 mana for a 6/5 insect with Megamorph costing 7 mana. Normally I wouldn't mention cards like this, but we have a lack of huge stuff in this set. We really do. This is a big dumb creature, and sometimes you just need big dumb creatures in the late game. If you Megamorph this, your opponent is staring down a 7/6. They're going to need some serious help to deal with that. The Crotic represents the top end of power and toughness in this set, so just remember that. Servant of the Scale is 1 green mana for a 0/0 human soldier that enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. When it dies, put X +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, where X is equal to the number of counters on the Servant. I want to like this card as there are obvious synergies with both Bolster and Exploit. My problem is the investment seems high and I'd almost rather include a random morph creature in my deck so I wouldn't have to worry about if this card is ever going to get turned on throughout the game. The optimist in me loves it, but you're going to need a serious engine to make this anywhere near effective. Shape the Sands is 1 green mana for an instant. Target creature gets +0/+5 and gains reach until end of turn. I mean, okay, it's super defensive, and if you're up against a strategy with a lot of damage-based removal or flyers, it could be good, but it also could be dead in your hand, as again, super defensive. Sight of the Scale Lords is 5 mana for an enchantment. At the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control with toughness 4 or greater get +2/+2 and gain vigilance until end of turn. The ability in general seems cool. My real problem is that with Bolster running around, the general toughness of a lot of creatures is purposefully made to be low. It's almost like you'd have to first Bolster or something like it to activate this already expensive enchantment. I'll pass for Limited, but I can think of a few players who would use this in Commander. Possibly the same people who are going to use Assault Formation. We'll see. Tread Upon is 2 mana for an instant. Target creature gets +2/+2 and gains trample until end of turn. So we're looking at a strictly worse version of Predator Strike, but that won't stop me from playing it. I think it's a decent combat trick and a fine way to manipulate combat. There isn't much like this in the way of green, which is unfortunate, but you gotta take what you can get. In this case, what you can get is Tread Upon. Now that we've rounded out the Best of the Rest series, what do you think about green? If I'm being completely honest, I think it's a little lackluster. You do have some decently sized creatures that can bully the board, but a lot of them have Formidable as something they need to be good. The quality of the combat tricks is also a bit lower than I'm used to. Overall, it'll make a decent support color, but I don't think it can carry itself as well as some of the other colors. Let me know what you think in the comments and we'll talk about it. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Dragons of Tarkir spoiler information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.
What?